Aman Gupta को compliment किया इस picture ने. So it's a lot of masala and they try to give an angle to it.
You know, they ask you who are your dream sharks and what is the kind of dream deal that you would want from these people.
By the way, you got the deal you asked for, right?
Yes. So this was the deal I wanted, and these are the two I wanted it from. Shark Tank has effectively reset our trajectory to our 3x level. Many times, you know, Trisha, you'd be surprised. You look at the back of a product, which is, let's say, an everyday cleaning product that you've been used to using, let's say a floor cleaner, and you'll realize you don't even know what's in it because they don't even have to, from a regulation standpoint, mention what chemicals are there.
We are so confused whether to take up that college placement, whether to, continue our 9 to 5 or like leave it and build a startup. How does an aspiring entrepreneur manage that aspiration of building their startup while doing a 9 to 5? And you have a glorious pedigree, right? You went to SRCC, LSE, and then you went to ISB as well.
I think having an MBA or having an MS is certainly not necessary for this world, you know.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode of the Witty Podcast. And today we have with us Simran from Koparo, who got a deal from Aman Gupta and Vinita on Shark Tank. So let's see what insights she has for us about which no one is talking yet.
Hi, I'm Simran Khara. I'm the CEO and founder of Koparo, and I'm here on the Witty Podcast with Tisha, my host.
Hi Simran, first of all, thank you so much for your time. So
You're most
our
welcome, Tisha.
podcast
Yes.
is the Witty Podcast, where
Okay.
Witty stands for Why is no one talking about this yet? And
Okay.
I think that aligns perfectly with your brand,
Right.
where no one is talking about the toxins that are there in our cleaning detergents, in our washing detergents. So why don't you tell us about that? How did you start your brand? And you discovered a problem,
Right.
but what encouraged you to build a business out of it?
Fab question, really. So, you know, my journey around these cleaning products began when I think most of us first, you know, took matters of cleaning in our own hands, right? And this was in the pandemic. There was no help coming in. You had to pretty much do it on your own. And once you start using, you know, some of these products which are full of ammonia, full of bleach, frankly, some of the brands of our parents, you know, you realize that it's pretty caustic. It's tough on your hands. There's a smell. There's sometimes fumes. There's all kinds of irritations around it, right? So I realized that, you know, we're cleaning, we're scrubbing, we're all well intentioned, right? It's not like your parents don't want to clean a surface, but we're actually building up a lot of toxins, right? When you start researching what's really in them, many times, you know, Trisha, you'd be surprised. You look at the back of a product, which is let's say an everyday cleaning product that you've been used to using, let's say a floor cleaner, and you'll realize you don't even know what's in it because they don't even have to, from a regulation standpoint, mention what chemicals are there. So that, you know, really got me thinking that if the consumer is becoming aware now, you know, we see so many of these things, right? There's a ban on cotton candy of a certain color. There's some news around some spices containing some additives which are cancer causing. So we're all very triggered about investing in our health, right? Because we're all working so hard. So why not in this aspect? And I genuinely saw that as a business opportunity. And I thought that, you know, वो बोलते हैं ना कि अगर if you're seeing a problem, then see the opportunity and be the solution. So just jumped in. Yeah.
Have you always been like that growing up?
So, I mean, I think I've always had a bias for action. You know, whether I look at my career, I was earlier in consulting, but I was really looking forward to getting my hands dirty in ops. So I joined industry. Back in the time, lesser people did that kind of thing. You know, when I was in industry, I was fairly comfortable in Star, but I said I want to shake things up. I want to learn something about the startup world, and I will only learn when I actually go do it. So I, you know, took the assignment to be the CEO of Juggernaut Books. So I think in that sense, I've always had an itch to do and talk less.
Yeah.
So I'll pause there.
So while you were working in Juggernaut, right?
Right.
How did you give time to building Koparo? And how did you decide, okay, this is the right time to leave this job and
Right.
do my startup full time?
So you know, I was a CEO at Juggernaut. So it was very important for me to have a very honest conversation with the founder there, because as a CEO, it's a strategic role. It's not just about certain months of transition or handover, right? It's a role where there are some things that you are doing which are longer term in nature. There's certain relationships you may hold which are very strategic. And therefore, it required a very honest conversation. So I think it was almost a year of preparation where first I kind of, you know, explained to the founder that I want to do something of my own and therefore I am looking at an exit, you know. And then we will pace the exit based on what happens, in my head regarding what I new stuff that I want to do, and then the comfort to Juggernaut because you have also built that, And while I wasn't the founder there, I was a very key member. So you also want to give it the best landing possible. And today I'm really proud because Juggernaut is still publishing the most amazing books. They're a viable, profitable, small business, and it continues to sort of make ripples in the world of content. So it's landed well, and I think that was very important to me. If you see in my career, I have worked all the way from 2006 till today, but I've only worked in 4 places.
Some really big places, McKinsey, Star, One Stars, all these great places. But for an aspiring entrepreneur, right, especially people my age, 20,
Yes.
23, right,
Yes.
we are so confused whether to take up that college placement, whether to, continue our 9 to 5 or like leave it and build a startup. How does an aspiring entrepreneur manage that aspiration of building their startup while doing a 9 to 5? What should a day in their life look like?
So I think, eventually you will have to take the leap and cut the cord with your 9 to 5 and move on. Also, I think it is not very ethical. I think if you're working in an organization where it is known that okay, I am building my startup and I'm transitioning out of here, and in the meantime I'm doing this job, it's okay. But if your employer doesn't know, right, and you're diverting your energy and time elsewhere, I'm not sure that's very kosher. I know it happens,
Yeah.
right? I know it happens, right? But I just think that those honest conversations are vital. Also, because let's say it doesn't work out, right? And you want to kind of come back, you want to have those doors open for you, right? I think it's very important to recognize this as early as possible. Don't burn bridges.
Right.
It takes a while to build them. So don't constantly be in this hurry to burn bridges. I think you can certainly devote time to your startup over weekends in the downtime, etc., while you're doing a 9 to 5. But the moment you feel you have a little bit of courage and conviction, you have to cut the cord. You will only, like, you can't learn swimming with your floaties on. No.
Right.
Like, even if you've learnt the stroke, you've learnt the underwater breathing,
Yeah.
but if you've got your floaty on, you're still not going to swim. You will have to take it off one
Right.
day, right? And then, therefore, you will come to that day. It's a moment, it's a journey. It will be different for different people. The day will come.
But that day comes from an internal sense of conviction or from external factors like, oh, my product is ready, the research is done, I have some investors on board, now I can
Right.
leave my job. Where
Yeah.
does that come from? Or is it a combination of
I
both?
think it's a combination of both for me, but I think depends on different people. Like depends on how introverted you are, where's your source of energy, right? If you have built that deep sense of conviction yourself, of course, external validation helps. It
Yeah.
helps if somebody says, oh, that is such a cool idea,
Yeah.
or like I'm on board, or I want to be your customer number one, or whatever, right? But I think, any sort of startup that you're doing, right? If you've been able to have some kind of an MVP, when you see it in flesh and blood, that makes the biggest difference in my mind, right? That's what drives internal conviction and external conviction, right? So I would always say that if you have a certain job, or you are in college and you are therefore not at the moment fully full time on your startup, just go launch.
Yeah.
Just see what that feels like. You will understand what is the customer reception, you will understand the challenges, you will understand your response to those challenges and how you enjoy that journey or you don't.
Yeah.
So just go for MVP, launch, and figure it out.
And you have a glorious pedigree, right? You went to SRCC, LSE, and then you went to ISB as well. How important do you think that is as an entrepreneur in terms of learnings and also in practical aspect, right? In terms of getting investments.
Right. So I think, what is, your education always helps you. Right. And what does pedigree, or like you said, like, what does it indicate to anybody externally is that I don't know if someone will be successful in disrupting the home cleaners market, but I know that she's extremely hardworking, or I know that she's extremely smart, or I know that she's driven because she's done A, B, and then she went and did C.
Track it.
So I think all it tells you is that this person is, willing to work hard, is sort of sincere, is conscientious, right? Because you're also looking for a lot of soft signals. You know, all signals are not about revenue, right? You are looking for a lot of soft signals because the best companies typically end up pivoting more than once,
Yeah.
you know, and they die one or two deaths before they are born again in their most glorious form.
Yeah.
So I think the pedigree is only indicative of that. But is that the only path? Absolutely not. I sometimes even question if, you know, a lot of startup founders, you know, are graduates. You know, there's some of them are not even graduates, right? And they're like, so I think having an MBA or having an MS is certainly not necessary for this world, you know. So I think some of those rules are getting rewritten, and the more role models that you have, the more real
The
it
more
becomes.
normalized it gets for others,
Correct.
that it's achievable.
Yeah. And having said that, I mean, I come from a middle class background. I think for me, I'll always value education. So even in my team, when I have someone who's telling me that, you know, they're confused, should they do this, should they not do this? I'm like, okay, the education will always be beneficial to you. It will always like either be a soft signal or it'll be a hard signal in terms of a better placement. So there are certain benefits to it, you know. So we should also not get carried away only by the outliers. Saying ki that guy was like a, you know, built a unicorn or a decacorn or whatever corn, and he or she did not even finish graduation. The thing is that there are few outliers like that, you know. So it's important to also not get too swayed by the outliers, but definitely the rules of the game are changing, and I'm glad.
And the question that everyone wants to know the answer to: how was your Shark Tank experience and how did you prepare for it?
So it was a great experience. I mean, you know, it's great platform for you to, if you have a consumer product, for you to tell your story on a national TV free of cost, practically, right? Because you're only spending on what you are in terms of your time in the studio, right? I mean, the team even provides your fare to come in to Mumbai and your stay, etc. So it's really it's some few crores of above the line marketing, which you wouldn't be able to afford for multiple years. Very few companies would be able to afford that for multiple years. So if you're a startup and if you have a consumer connection, you know, whether it's a service or it's a product, please go for it, you know, apply. Because it is genuinely game changing in terms of your trajectory of users and consumers and just getting your word out there, right? Which is what all of us want to do. We just want to get our word out there because we all believe that the demand exists. We just need to stoke it. We just need to build awareness. You know, how did we prepare for it? So, you know, I will confess here, I'm not a Shark Tank viewer. Okay. So, but my team is, you know, they are a lot younger than me. I think they may be half my age, most of them. And so they were very gung ho that, you know, we have to apply. So it's like I went with the flow broadly. But there's now 3 seasons, and therefore there is a lot of information out there in terms of, you know, what are the kind of questions they ask, you know, how do you present yourself, what is it that you don't do, what is it that you do. So I would say that apply, and if you do clear the audition rounds and therefore apply, please apply seriously, because why would you waste your time? Your time is precious as a founder. But once you do know that you are making it to the final auditions, really take out that week, 10 days to prep properly, you know, while they train you again for 2-3 days there. But, you know, if this can change the trajectory of your business, why not?
Yeah. On these lines, right, a lot of entrepreneurs have been complaining recently that their episode didn't get telecasted.
Yes.
And they spent so much on inventory and preparation, and they did get a deal as well. So, what is your take on that, if you're comfortable answering?
Sure. So, I mean, you know, when you do enter the conversations with Sony, they do make you sign a contract. The contract does state that they don't have to air your episode. So, from a legal standpoint, they're well within their rights not to. Of course, what happens is that I mean, we're all human, so we all have our biases. So if you have got a deal, you do think that you will make an airing. And that is, I think, a very, very natural thought. Now, obviously, what happened over here is that they ran out of the sheer number of episodes, you know. So I don't think it's a very deliberate measure, you know, on the part of a TV company. I've been in TV before, you know. There are other compulsions, you know, you have a prime time slot. It needs to now be replaced by a dance show or a singing show. Those show dates are locked. So I don't think it's necessarily a very deliberate move by them. But does it hurt if I put my founder hat on that if you have built up that inventory? Obviously, it hurts you. It hurts you financially, it hurts you a lot emotionally
Right.
because I think you build it up in your head and you probably tell your family
Yeah.
members and it doesn't happen. So I sincerely hope that they make it to some YouTube cut which allows them to get some benefit and use that inventory just purely financially, so they shouldn't be at a loss.
Yeah. Also, in terms of like narrative formation, right? If you look at your episode on YouTube, right? So it's Aman Gupta ko compliment kiya is picture ne. So it's a lot of masala, and they try to give an angle to it. So what is your take on that? Do you think that eventually helps to start the conversation about your product, even if it's slightly clickbaity, or do you think it should be more educational, informative?
So I think it all depends on your style and your experience, right? So also just before even answering all of that, I would say that I think my shooting went on for an hour and a half. What you see is about 15,
70
16
minutes,
minutes, right? So it's not like they have also shown all of it, right? So I would have spoken more in depth about a certain product or an ingredient or some efficacy that may not have all made it to TV because you also have to make it engaging.
Yeah.
And the TV channel is the expert at that, right? They know out of the hour and a half, which is the best 17 minutes to show. So you let them do their job. They find ways to create the hooks,
Yeah.
right? Because basically you're asking somebody to watch what I think is almost like a infomercial
Yeah.
for 17 minutes.
Yeah.
And you watch it. So there's some real world class editing skills there, right? Where there are enough hooks for you to constantly say, okay, fine. Okay, let me hear what she'll say next. Okay, now let me hear what she'll say next. So I think definitely there is some drama that they are able to infuse. Not because you were doing the drama necessarily, but because they
sells.
edit it in that way. They edit it in that way, right? But I think you should be natural. I think, to almost rehearse and come across as saying that I was force fitting, viral lines into my pitch. It doesn't work, right? Because it's an organic conversation. You're pitching to people who are investing in your business. They're putting in their own money into your business. It's not institutional money, it's their own money. So they will ask you questions. They do need to be convinced. So I don't think you should work towards virality.
Yeah.
If you get it, great, right? But you don't actively work towards it. Yeah.
And you got a deal from Aman and Vinita, right?
Yes.
So how has your experience been post Shark Tank, and how have they helped you?
They're very helpful. Like I think both of them have. So when I was going in, one of the things that they do is, they ask you who are your dream sharks and what is the kind of dream deal that you would want from these people. And so,
By the way, you got the deal you asked
yes,
for, right?
yes. So this was the deal I wanted, and these are the two I wanted it from. So, and it was very deliberate, right? I think Aman is an amazing sort of digital marketer, and Vinita has got a very broad understanding of the Indian consumer and how the consumer preferences have changed, and she's been able to operate in the online world and the offline world as successfully, which is truly unique. So I really did want both of them. And I think I said this on the episode as well. I think the ability to have a conversation with some of these people when you are thinking through some big trade-offs in your business or some big strategic moments is very valuable. In addition to the capital, of course, they've been approachable. They obviously have teams, so they will not personally pick up your calls, but their teams will pick up your calls. So they've been, I would say, A, approachable. B, if you are sharp and you say, I need your help with doing this introduction, or I need your help to figure out whether I should go down A path or B path, and what are the risks of B, the conversation is sharp, it's on point, it's quick. So I've had a very good experience. Yes.
And the Shark Tank effect in terms of sales.
That's been great. So touch wood, we're just coming out of an out of stock situation now. So while you prepare for it and you prepare for the surge, what does happen often is you can't predict in which product the surge will come, and you can't predict how much the surge will be across the variants. So with all the best laid plans, some went wrong, but the surge has been real. The
Can you
sales
share
effect is
a
large.
number with us?
So the first couple of weeks we were operating at between 6 to 10x for most products.
Wow.
But Shark Tank has effectively reset our trajectory to a 3x level now. And I very happy about it, So I think more than anything else, we've got our message out, I think there was always a question that, does the Indian consumer really care, about clean label cleaning? Do they really care कि dishwash liquid में क्या रंग है, कि floor cleaner में back होना चाहिए, नहीं होना चाहिए? Do they really care कि there is bleach in the detergent? And I have my answer. They care. They care a lot. The only reason they were not able to show you they care is because they did not know that there are other alternatives available. So I think we're also shaping in a large way the sort of clean home cleaners category, And it's about a category creation, right? Because one day you will buy a brand X, one day you will buy brand Coparo. But it's very, very important to have this conversation at scale, and that's what TV gave us.
What are 3 or 4 key insights that you have on the changing consumer behavior in India?
Right. So I think 3 or 4 things which when we look at our numbers, they stand out to us, and then when I talk to friends in the startup world, I definitely see that happen. Is that the Indian consumer is very rapidly willing to pay a premium as
Okay.
long as the premium is value that he or she sees.
Is it just in tier 1 cities or tier 2, tier 3 cities?
So I'm
as
at the moment talking about metro and tier one,
Okay.
but that is a big part of our urban
Right.
consumption story. So I think there is a ability to pay and there's a willingness to pay a premium for a quality product. Everybody's perceived quality is different. Someone is solving for the fact that they have a pet in the house. Somebody else is solving for the fact that they've got a wooden surface and therefore they'd rather pay 20 rupees extra but clean it well so that the wood doesn't get spoiled. So everyone is making their own trade-offs, but I think if there is largely your product is affordable but it is at a premium, there is a possibility of creating a proper consumption pool over there. I think the second thing that we're seeing is a very big offtake in terms of quick commerce. So quick commerce as a channel for us is just exploding. And
But
I
you're
think
almost always sold out on Blinkit. I'm your consumer. I can tell you.
I hope the Blinkit folks are watching so that we get larger POs next time. So definitely, I think Blinkit, so strong in the north, right? Zepto so strong in the west. Instamart fairly strong, I would say, in the south. But now both these other players are also making inroads there. I think in metros, there's been a seismic shift, like a tectonic shift almost towards the convenience of quick commerce. So I think we're seeing that as a channel which is here to stay. I think it's the next big disruption for e-com. And fortunately for us, within grocery, home cleaners are a reasonable part of it, and therefore we play into that basket because you can't buy everything
Right.
on quick com. And so that's the second sort of big trend that we're seeing. And in terms of my consumers, I think we are seeing that people are willing to invest in themselves, and if as a byproduct that is good for the planet, that's great.
And how did you crack your pricing? Because you're very competitively priced with some of
Right.
the giants that are operating in this space right now. So how did you price?
So we learned the hard way. We started higher. We tried to skim. We tried to figure out that what's the demand at this price point, and then hit and trial. You kind of get to a price which works for your economics, because you will also have improved your purchase by then. Your bottles will be costing you less. You'll be buying more bulk. You'll be printing labels in bulk. So eventually, your cogs come under control. And then you have to decide that, if the next couple of years are about customer acquisition, what is the product margin that you can operate on, because pricing plays a very big role in conversion. I think we're nowhere equal, and I think we won't be because we are selling a superior product.
Right.
Now, if my product does not have artificial colors, it doesn't have petroleum based surfactants, it doesn't have certain very harsh chemicals, and therefore I have to put in other good stuff, and more of it to give you the same efficacy, it will cost more. But we're seeing people are able to pay.
Okay. And one question, assuming you're the elder sibling of everyone who's watching and they are really looking up to you for a guide on how they can also build their startup. What were the steps that you took?
Right.
Basic steps, right? A Google research, then you contacted a manufacturer through IndiaMart. Those
Yes.
basic steps that you took
Yes.
to finally be here. So can you just let us know those steps?
Sure. I mean, the basic steps are, depends again on whether your business is a D2C business or it's a different business. But I'll just put the D2C hat on because that's the only thing I can speak on with any kind of proper experience. Yes, it begins with saying that here's a consumer need. Do you believe that the market has some white spaces, some gaps, some opportunities? And therefore, what kind of products, could work over here? And then you start doing certain searches. I would say go beyond India Mart, be a bit more deliberate on it. Figure out who's manufacturing what in that space, go meet those manufacturers. People are very open now. And also the whole one thing that's happened in the last 10 years, because of so many D2C brands, which have come up, which have scaled well, contract manufacturers have a lot more faith in the fact that startups can do well, and they also become much more professional. So they will respond to an email, they will get on a VC, they will pick up your WhatsApp chat, etc. So I feel that go in, speak to 5 manufacturers, understand what the MOQs will be, understand if other people are manufacturing this product, understand anything around the ingredients and the supply chain. And then the steps are simple. You have a product need, you have a, therefore you have a certain product prototype. You will work with some kind of an R&D lab on creating the first set of prototypes. You will potentially use Shopify to create a website. You will either do it yourself or you will work with somebody else to kind of put your stuff out on marketplaces. It's a fairly democratic process. Enough reams of material on YouTube and everywhere else on, various WhatsApp groups like D2C Insider and this and that, where you will find all of this and more, right? But that one piece of advice that I would give is that because it is so easy for anybody to do, right? So therefore it becomes harder for you to do. So
Yeah.
because it is so easy, it is
Yeah.
also hard.
Yeah.
So what you should really think about is that, of course, think at the intersection of product and distribution. So I think a lot of large future brands will get created around newer distribution channels. So if there is a newer distribution channel coming up, and there is a product category which fits very well with that distribution channel, right? Then double click within that category and see what could that product look like, right? Like there's a reason why fashion brands in India scale so well, because there is so much distribution,
Yeah.
which you perhaps may not do that all over again today because now there are so many of them. So you need to figure out for 2024, and looking forward for the next 3, 4, 5 years, what are the distribution channels, the new ones that are going to emerge? And do you have a product that fits in very well into those channels? So I think the magic will get created at the intersection of the both, because it's become much harder to do performance marketing and to scale up brands using just performance marketing. So you will need extra distribution to push your product through.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Do share this video with a friend who's trying to build something in a similar space or trying to build a D2C brand. You never know how this might help them and they might thank you in the future with an equity or two. Thank you.